I Want to Jump Like Dee Dee, with me, Giles Sibbald, is the music podcast that does music a bit differently. I'm talking to some incredible musicians, DJs and producers about how they use an experimental mindset to fuel their own creativity, pursue new challenges, overcome fears, bounce back from mistakes. It's a huge honour to welcome Gina Birch today. Gina has been a massive influence on culture and society throughout her life and an inspiration for many. She's done film direction, videography. She's a painter and the co-founder of the hugely seminal post-punk band, the Raincoats. What's really sort of struck me, both in Gina's music and her painting, is that she's always her unique self, going where her heart and her mind takes her. You know, kind of like sort of vandalising these existing narratives with humour, subversion, and vulnerability. And I think what's really important is she's having a lot of fun whilst doing it. And I think it's this complete relatability that makes Gina's impact so powerful. And just to finish off this intro, if I can just read a quote from Kim Gordon, because I think Kim sort of says it perfectly. She said of the Raincoats, "They seemed like ordinary people playing extraordinary music. They had enough confidence to be vulnerable and to be themselves without having to take on the mantle of male rock, punk rock aggression." And I think that sums it up perfectly. So Gina, thanks so much for coming on, and a big welcome.
Hi, thank you.
Hi.
A lovely introduction.
So you just released, actually I couldn't quite believe it, your first 7 inches as a solo artist just in September, which is the wonderful feminist song.
Yeah, it's funny because I did do a kind of solo project just after when Geffen didn't do our second album, and they'd signed us for 2 albums, and I had a small amount of money, and I thought, I'm going to record some songs. But so they were all my songs on this Hangovers CD, but I got so many other musicians involved. It felt like a project, even though they didn't all play on all the songs. I didn't call it Gina Birch, I called it the Hangovers.
I
think I was drinking quite a lot at the time, and I was kind of launching into, well, I was trying to put the brakes on it. I was trying to stop drinking. So it was a kind of transitional period. But I felt like I am not worthy to call it a Gina Birch album. It felt like a collaborative event. Whereas with this one, although we had played feminist song a little bit live in the Raincoats of late, I did do nearly all the instruments myself, and everything about the song was mine. Anna did play some monotron on it.
Monotron,
yeah. So it did feel like mine, and the Raincoats weren't going to do any more recording. Anna didn't want to do any more recording together. So although we did record together. It came out as Gina Burch. and what happened was Dave Buick from Third Man Record, the White Stripes label, Jack White's label, had approached the Raincoats about doing a single for the launching the label and the shop in London. And we weren't going to do a Raincoats thing. So I said, well, hang on a minute, I've got this great song, and why don't we do that? So we've done that, and we are hopefully doing a little more shortly.
Wow, fantastic! So, I mean, how did it feel, sort of doing it as a sort of solo project after kind of like collaborating in on at least on the musical side of your life?
Well, I have performed quite a lot solo. I make films, I project the films, and I sound on the soundtrack of the films and play live in front of them. So I feel like I've exposed myself ever since the Raincoats first began, because in the early Raincoats, when we started playing, I really couldn't play my instrument and I couldn't sing. So I mean, there's nothing like kind of being naked on the stage.
Yeah.
With kind of few skills to pull you through. So for me, that's what punk was about. It was about just kind of letting some kind of courage or guts and will to make something creative pull you through. And I think I've operated like that for a lot of my life,
Yeah.
kind of leaping off the cliff, and hasn't always worked, but mostly it's kind of pushed me on to do better.
I mean, go back to. I mean, it's interesting how I'm interested how you sort of got into that scene. I mean, in terms of your kind of mindset of how you, from when you were growing up as a kid, what sort of form to attract you into that sort of scene. The either the environment or the people that you were growing up with.
I think it's a whole host of things that a recipe that
Yeah.
probably moderately unique. I had a very safe, almost too protected childhood. Very shy, but I loved singing. I always rocking and singing, and kind of, I don't know, and I think what happened was when as you get to teens, you kind of feel like you want to. I needed to burst out of this thing. I needed to burst out of myself, and I needed to burst out of my home. I felt like I felt kind of. It was kind of claustrophobic.
Claustrophobic, yeah.
And so I kind of first, went into, I got involved with, the kind of locals in the town who took drugs and got up to all sorts of mischief. And that was kind of my first step into liberation. But, then I was the cute girlfriend who kind of was a sidekick. Then I went to art school.
Yeah.
Nottingham. And I found my people. I found all these kind of unusual, creative people. And all the time when I was growing up, people used the word imagination a lot, and I could never understand what it was, and I didn't know where my imagination was. I thought somehow there was a little box that you opened, and it said imagination, because I just couldn't understand it.
Yeah.
And then I just realized it was actually all you have to do is make things up. Imagination is making things up.
Making things up. Yeah.
But I didn't really know that, or I couldn't describe it for myself, making things up. But on foundation, I had to make things up.
Yeah.
We were encouraged to make things up. I remember we had to make a series of landscapes. It was kind of like a weird kind of Tarkovsky movie or something, that we kind of drew these environments, and then you'd go through that portal and into the next environment and into the next environment. And I just realized, with color and shape and texture, I could make up these little worlds or environments, and that was interesting. And then I discovered, conceptual art, and that ideas were really interesting in terms of just the way you thought about things was interesting. You could, I mean, one of the ones that always made me laugh was the Michael Craig Martin oak tree. It was a glass of water, and he called it the oak tree, and I kind of got that in a funny way. I kind of, I thought it's an oak tree, and so actually kind of I discovered this conceptual art, and I believed in it. I kind of it kind of just opened my brain.
Yeah.
And I didn't become a conceptual artist, but I was I'd found the imagination making it up box. I'd found conceptual art opening the brain box. And then I was ready. I was kind of like I am a receiver. I'm a receiver. Yeah. My antennae were going.
It was up. Yeah.
I was primed. And when I came to London to do fine art, I moved into a street where it was a little cul-de-sac in Bayswater, and there were lots of interesting people living there who'd been around for quite a long time. Some of them, since the 60s, they were kind of anarchists and makers and sculptors, and there was Richard Dudansky, who'd been in the 101ers, was married to Esperantha, who was Palmolive's sister.
Yeah.
And my friend from art school, Neil Brown, he'd been at Holland Park Comprehensive, and he'd put on various 101ers shows. So it was a squatting time.
Yeah.
There were squatting tea rooms. I moved from quite a kind of comfortable, safe home into this kind of falling down, plaster coming off the walls, cold water only, two little rings on the floor, gas leaking, 2 rooms at the top of this house. And it was hideous, but it was also heaven.
Heaven, yeah.
And I was lonely. I was, I was a fish out of water, because in Nottingham, I'd known where everything was, but suddenly I jumped off a cliff, another cliff, and I'd gone into this place where I didn't know what was happening.
Yeah.
I didn't know that I could go to a paint shop and buy a pot of paint and get some brushes or some plaster. I made the paint at art school to paint my walls. I was so naive, really. But again, I was a receiver. So punk was happening. I'd chanced upon, with my friend Alex, the first Sex Pistols gig when we'd been looking at which art school to go to.
Yeah.
So we'd kind of seen a little glimpse of this thing, and then suddenly, when I arrived in September 1976, and so there was stuff happening, that there was. I remember on November the 5th at the Royal College of Art, there was the Clash, and I can't remember who else was playing. I just remember the Clash being there. I remember Sid Vicious there with his chains, looking very kind of threatening, and it was all really exciting.
Yeah.
That whole scene kind of belonged to that squatting art school, stomping the streets world. So again, it was just little bits of things just all making sense to me.
Yeah. It's interesting. I remember when you said about that, your kind of hometown sort of feeling that kind of claustrophobic sort of feel. I mean, like when I was growing up, I grew up in the north of England in a sort of small town, and what you were describing sort of felt very similar to what I felt. And it was a sort of small town. I was kind of exploring this. I remember going into record shops and seeing, kind of my first recollection, seeing record covers of I think sort of Susie and the Banshees and Killing Joke and sort of the Dirt Wears White Socks, Adam and the Ants album. Just thinking of this other world that I wanted to be in.
Yeah.
And I think that the difference is you did it. You kind of went into it. I didn't. And so I wondered, I mean, did you, your parents support you in that? What was the sort of parents' view of that? Were they creatives?
No, I was the second child. I had an older brother, and he kind of fulfilled my dad's idea of what a son should do.
Right.
My brother was very studious and academic. He went to Cambridge and did language.
Right. Yeah.
So I was the second child, the youngest, and a girl. So they kind of let me do what I wanted to do, but I was a bit off the rails. And so I don't know if they were a bit frightened of me. I wonder. I think maybe they were a bit scared, which is odd, really, when I think about it. But I know that teenagers can be. So I was in Nottingham. I don't know if I said that it was Nottingham. So I'm a Midlands girl.
Yeah.
it felt like really far from the sea. I was
Yeah.
mad about water, and that felt really far from the sea. And yeah, it was. I could have stayed in Nottingham. I
Mm.
felt like there was a kind. The art school there was great actually.
Yeah.
The art school was a portal to art, the art world. So
Yeah.
it was actually, that's where I got my first liberation.
Mm.
So I it was really the home that was kind of felt safe, too safe.
Too safe. Yeah. Yeah.
So the art school was a portal, and for some reason I do think it was kind of, I don't really believe in this, but there was something, because I had decided to go to Leeds Art School, and then at the last minute a friend of mine said, "Oh, go and see Hornsey in Alexandra Palace," which was
Mm.
completely not the art school that, all the boxes were not ticked by Hornsey, but suddenly
Yeah.
I decided I had to go there, and that's where I
Wow.
met Anna da Silva,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's how I met Neil, and that's how I ended up in the street next door to Esperanza, my
Wow.
sister, and sometimes I think, blimey, there was a little
Strange,
bit
isn't
of
it?
destiny in there.
Yeah. No, it sounds like it, doesn't it?
It really feels like odd, because really it wasn't the place I should have gone to.
Yeah.
Alex and I hitchhiked all over the country. We looked at all these different art schools all over the place, and Hornsey definitely wasn't the one I should have gone to. But anyway, I went there, and yeah, it was funny, because I had imagined I'd have this big space, and I would make these big canvases, and I would kind of emote onto these canvases. They'd be like the kind of diary of my
Mm.
feelings and thoughts and ideas, and when I got there, I had a little tiny space at the top of this staircase with a little table, and I was like, that isn't what I imagined. And so I got out some video. I was like, what am I going to do? And then I'd seen this Dan Graham piece, a video piece, and so they had video equipment. So I got this other woman to do it with me, and we rolled around on the floor in the in one of the rooms, filming each other, filming. So it was like, I didn't know why I was doing it or what I was doing, but I just kind of started. I thought, what do I do? Where do I
Yeah.
start? How do I do this? So I think one of the things that I've done is I've never um, I've never thought too strongly and talked myself out of doing something.
Mm. Mm.
If an idea
Interesting.
crosses my mind, I give it a go, and I don't question it too much. I just go with it, and obviously, as long as it's not too unsafe.
Do it.
So I started with that, and then Derek Jarman came to the school, and he showed his Super 8 films. I got myself a Super 8 camera at some point, and I started doing that. And then I with a friend, I made a 3 minute. I screamed for the length of a 3 minute cartridge.
Yeah.
It was kind of joining together the idea of conceptual art and Super 8, just kind of using the medium in an odd way. And I've recently updated it. Well, I updated this 3 minute screen from 1977 in 2000, and then I did
Mm.
it again in 2021. But then I made these giant paper screens, and I ran at them, and I jumped through them, and
Wow.
I did kind of crazy things. Um,
Do you think this was you kind of like sort of breaking out of that kind of safety of the home, and just a reaction against that to do this stuff? And also it sounds like you relied a lot on your instinct.
I totally did
Yeah.
rely on my instinct, because the things make more sense now than they did at the time.
Mm.
I couldn't really have told you why I was doing what I was doing at the time.
Mm.
When I look at it now, I go, oh, that's a phrase, I'm not a great philosopher, but I always like this Kierkegaard phrase that you live life forward and you understand it backwards, that you.
Ah, yes. Yeah.
But I mean, that feels very true in my
It
case.
does, yeah.
I you know, I'm not intellectually inclined, perhaps, you know, but I've become more reflective
Mm,
later in life. I still run with an idea if I have it, particularly in my painting and my songs. If an idea crosses my mind, or I hear something on the news, or somebody says something, I write it down and I think that's good. That's a
yeah,
really good catalyst for this next for something.
yeah,
I,
yeah,
I I'm very attuned to catalysts.
yeah. Okay. And,
Uh,
and those kind of catalysts can be sort of anything. You're just sort of really looking for those sort of triggers that spark something in your mind, and it's like, okay, that resonates with me.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. I mean, some people, you know, I know some people think, "What am I going to paint?
Mm,
What am I going to paint?" And I'm like, "Oh my God, I've got like, I could wake up in the
I've got,
morning and you know, I turn on the radio, or I look at something, or I just remember something, and I go that this that." So yeah,
yeah.
the latest one was I thought I would, you know, the newspapers printed all these photographs of Carrie Simmons'
Mm,
design for Number 11. I don't know if any of them were true or not, but I
mm,
think they were pictures of the designer's home. But there's that really hideous one of the wallpaper and the matching sofa in the same fabric, and so then I thought I'm going to paint this picture, and then I'm going to have Boris kind of a really big kind of elephantine Boris kind of flopped with his arm draping off and just seeing his bum at the back, you know, kind of just lounging on this thing. And I don't know, I just made me laugh. And I thought, so I just started doing that.
in terms of the like the you know, those rules, if you want to call it sort of rules, you know, when you're in the kind of the raincoats. And I remember when we would when we did the arts lab session last year, I think it was, sort of during lockdown. um I asked you about you writing words on your paintings. And I remember you saying at the time that that was a big no-no in the kind of the art world. But you know, so those rules in terms of, like, you know, how you wrote the Raincoats music, you know, you didn't you know, follow, you know, traditional kind of music, you know, verses, bridges, etc., and things like that. So that kind of rule breaking has always sort of been part of your life, I guess.
Yeah, I think so. I
I mean,
mean,
I don't know if rule breaking is the right phrase, but you know, not following convention, I guess.
there's a bit of me that really likes wanting to follow convention, but I've realized
Mm,
actually it's really not the best not the best place to go.
yeah,
um, and there are brilliant people following the conventions, and they do it
mm,
really well. And actually, there are other ways of doing things. And if you look at things in a different way and you skew round to the side,
yeah,
you get a different view, which becomes more your own.
mm,
If you follow what has, you know, what's always gone and what has to be done, you are treading the path with people who, you know, they've trained in this thing.
in this thing,
This,
yeah,
this is how you do it, and you do it with these notes and these feeling in this way, and they're really good at it.
yeah,
And some of them are really cheesy.
yeah, yeah,
Some of them are brilliant, but you know, I have found when I try to do the right thing, so to
yeah.
speak, yeah, I end up with a big pile of cheese. I don't like it, and I always think if you don't like it yourself,
Yeah,
you know, why would anybody else like it? I
yeah,
know that there are things that people like that I don't like. But you know, when you're looking at your oeuvre, you just go, God, that's awful.
That's all. Yeah.
I think if you like it yourself, I mean, even if you can just bear it, that's quite important. And so I think just taking a step or two, or going the opposite way, is actually you just see something different. And I mean, you know, it's like when I saw the Slits play, for example.
Yeah.
You know, I had seen all those amazing punk bands playing. You know, I've seen the Sex Pistols, the Clash, Subway Sect, the Buzzcocks. Oh, so many different bands. And they were great. And I love seeing Goddard with the music stand with the lyrics. And, you know, it seems like really kind of, oh, of course, you know. And I love the fact that they once said we should glue our shoes to the floor and go on stage and step into them, because they didn't feel they had to leap about, you know. So I think punk was this idea that you could be all these different things, which was great. But there were, you know, real dearth of females, and never occurred to me in a million years, I wasn't a musician, that I would be in a band. I mean, it just seemed absurd. Yeah. And then I saw the Slits play. Yeah. And it was just astonishing. And it was like a light went on. I thought, that's what I want to do, that. And it seems so odd now to think that bands like that, well, I mean, there was Fanny, and there were a couple of other women bands, but it was seeing the Slits, seeing their anarchic nature, the songs that spoke to me about shoplifting, or, you know, picking up, or about weird architecture, or, you know, whatever. It was those songs, like, I knew they were for me. And I knew that they were being sung to me, for me, and that they were inviting me to do something.
Did it feel like there was, because there were others doing it, that it's like, okay, that is really speaking to me. It helps you kind of like courage, you know, to break out and do your own thing.
It's really hard to describe, because up until that point, it was like, no, I was like, this is analogy that I've used a bit, but I once I was doing this weird overtone chanting workshop. Yeah, don't ask, in Hampstead once. And there was this guy who was talking about when the first blue tit knew how to peck into the silver top of a milk bottle. All other blue tits knew, just by some
form of osmosis or something.
Yeah, that they could do it too. And it was only when I saw the Slits do that I knew I could do it too. Prior to that, I wouldn't have bought a guitar or written a song, or, you know, it just was nowhere in my psyche. So it was such a kind of revelation to me.
Wow.
As a girl, you know, and it seems bizarre and it's quite hard to describe, but I was a blue tit. Being told that I could peck into that milk bottle.
Did you find that's really incredible that you have that experience, and it's almost like at that time that's your catalyst. That's what I need to be able to kind of do that myself. And then when you got together with, you know, with kind of like Anna and Vicky and Paloma, those people are, you know, the same sort of mindset, and was there a kind of collective self-belief that yes, we can do this together?
That's a very romantic way of looking at it, to be honest. I think Anna and I, although we were polar opposites in kind of emotionally, temperamentally, both had that belief somehow, although we were both also quite skeptical of our ability to do it.
Yeah.
We went through quite a number of different combinations. Because we'd had Patrick Keeler, who made London, and Robinson, and filmmaker. We'd had Kate Corris, who was the very first Slits guitarist when she got thrown out of the Slits to be replaced by Viv Albertine. We'd had an architect woman called Jeremy Frank. We had Nick Turner on drums. Well, we'd had so many different people.
Yeah.
And then when Palmolive got chucked out of the very band that she started, and she came to play with us, we were so thrilled, because that was the moment that we've kind of she was the one, she was the one. So me, Anna, and Palmolive, we were already like, yep, this is gonna go. And then Palmolive put this advert in Compendium Books, and Vicky saw it. Her friend Caroline said, you come on, let's go and look at this band. So Vicky came to watch us. Apparently she didn't think much of us. And I think Patrick Keeler was playing that, and Palmolive was on drums or tablas, I can't remember. But Caroline, her friend, said, they're great, you've got to do it. I think Vicky slightly remembers something different now, or maybe I'm misremembering it. But so then Vicky joined, and then we worked on the songs. And then Mayo Thompson came, and he was. I don't know if you've seen the Velvet Underground documentary.
Yes, yeah.
But it's very interesting, the John Cale aspect of it, Lamont Young and John Cage and all that. Is fascinating. All that very music stuff that kind of. And Vicky wasn't familiar with John Cale. And Mayo was talking to her a lot about it, and well, I wanted to actually record some of that, maybe borrow a bit for something, from the documentary.
Yeah.
So that added this other layer of sophistication, although Vicky found it quite difficult, because it had been squeezed. She said it sounds like a cheese wire or something. I don't know what a cheese wire sounds like. But so Anna had studied languages and literature, so she was quite literary. I was kind of this kind of little weird antennae explosion thing. Palmolive clattering on her drums, and then so we were at that point the four corners. We were the pillars, and I mean, Anna has revealed later that, because she was very encouraging for us all to write songs, was that she was very influenced by the Beatles having, each, John, Paul, George and Ringo, each had an identity, even if George and Ringo weren't given too much room on the album.
Too much room, yes.
But so we did have we had a strong identity, the four of us. I mean, and then when Palmolive left, she did leave quite a big hole, but that made for a weird second album of Oddie Shape, which kind of forced us in a way to be creative in different ways,
I mean, interesting about identity. How do you feel that your identity has sort of shifted over the years? Do you feel that it has?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when I started out in the Raincoats, I was this kind of receptor of all things. I remember, I was very taken with Mayo's ideas and his odd brain, and I remember Palmolive saying to me, "Oh, you're too gullible." I think I didn't even know what the word gullible meant. I think I was still mopping up ideas without too much I didn't quite. I was in the process of becoming. I think we're
I see.
all
Yeah.
still in the process of becoming, but I was in my early becoming.
Early stages. Yeah, I see. Yeah.
So I think, now I feel like, there's bits of that have quite gone quite solid at the bottom. My cake is being baked, or my souffle. I don't know. I've still got stuff kind of coming up the top, but yeah, I was a very I was quite naive, and Anna is much more earthbound, much more rooted in a way, and much more had very strong ideas about how she wanted things to be.
Yeah.
And I found that frustrating at times because I was shooting off all over the place, and she found
Yeah.
that frustrating with me. But on the other hand, I think we complemented each other in that way.
That's really interesting that you get. That's an area that I'm sort of interested in, is how the kind of diverse thought processes, and some people who like structure, and then people who thrive more on the kind of unstructured and sort of chaotic, can blend together to sort of create things that sort of work.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, some people can't bear, some very structured people. I was doing a course in psychoanalysis and psychoanalysis and counselling, and we had this amazing chaotic tutor, and there were two of us who were quite chaotic, and then there was this one woman who joined us who was PA to the MD, and she was totally into her notes and her writing, and we're supposed to be doing this week, and the three of us we were like, yeah, that's interesting. We were marching off into this. She left because she couldn't cope with.
Couldn't handle that.
She couldn't handle what was going on, and it was very interesting to me that I was definitely the out. I was one of the out there people, that I thrive in that environment of chaos.
Chaos.
Anna is chaotic in one way, but she has very it's quite odd, because Anna would never sit down and explain to me anything. It just was, and it's revealed itself very slowly over the years of maybe she didn't quite understand what was going on, or she couldn't articulate what was going on, but her steadfastness in the kind of independence, and really keeping control of our own means, and and only doing this if it was really right. And
this is fascinating for me, because I think that it we're in a, I mean, the world's always been sort of complex, but especially now it's really difficult. I mean, it's so complex to kind of get things done, and how different things interlock. And this idea, I think this idea of sort of emotional intelligence, kind of like self-awareness and empathy, those sort of components, I think, are really important now, to be, so that if you to understand yourself, that if you're a certain personality, you work a certain way, or you believe certain things, but to be able to understand somebody else's perspective, I think is really overlooked in a lot of, whether it's work, personal life, or anything.
Yeah. It is interesting, because Anna and I would fire off at each other sometimes in a sound check. We'd have these blazing rows about nothing in particular, which were probably a kind of symptomatic of other things, maybe, I don't know, but it's so great now to have that friendship with her, with Shirley, and at the kind of depth of understanding and experience is magnificent. But it's funny, isn't it? I mean, like Paul McCartney, I don't mean to draw parallels here, but Paul McCartney was talking about John and how much she loves him now, and he said, well, I've never said I love you at the, poor lads from Liverpool and all that. But, there's this idea that you have been through so much, and although theirs was quite short-lived in a way, but and lots of different people who've fought, and because they, if you're in a family, you might fall out with your sibling, but you're kind of locked into the family. Whereas if you're in a band, you can bugger off, form another band, and
well, this is it. And again, sort of relationships. I think. I mean, I sort of lost touch with a lot of few, sort of family members over the years. Just by becoming too introspective, in my sort of own world. And it was sort of when my mum, became really bad with Alzheimer's that I started to sort of reconnect with family. And you sort of realize that actually, these are people that are almost sort of part of you, and you realize then what you've missed, and you can easily lose that. And friendships, I guess, are easier to lose. You can just lose touch with people, and it's kind of like especially people that you've had, even going back to school days, people that you've had that intense relationship with, to then lose that is, you lose part of yourself. But it's easy to do.
You do, but I like my husband grew up in Auckland, and he went through, same friends in primary school, senior school, university, or down the pub or whatever. So, but although he's lived in London since 1984 or something, so he's lost touch with a lot of them now. But, with me growing up, there were lots of breaks in the people that I knew or hung out with. And and sometimes, when you do go back, like through Friends Reunited or something, you're like,
yes,
you have this initial rush of love, and then you go, actually, we're on completely different paths here.
That's very true as well. Yeah.
But
you shift your identity, you become different people. You
do. There's a bit of you that can connect, and then there's a lot of you that's just like, whoa. Yeah, but that, like with Anna and Shirley, I think that we've our paths have diverged and come back together on many occasions.
Yeah. How you deal with sort of mistakes. How do you deal with those? Because I mean, especially these days, it's so easy to sort of make mistakes, isn't it? How do they make you feel?
Some wake you up at night in a cold sweat and think, "Oh my God," and some are brilliant. In a way, you do just have to let the bad ones go, because you can't undo them.
Yeah.
Sometimes, unbeknown to you at the time, good things come out of them later, or if they don't, it's a lesson learned.
Yeah.
And it's part of the scarring of your being, and those scars turn you into the person that you are.
Yes, you are.
But the mistakes in terms of creativity, the creative ones are always pretty good, because they are, that they help you off the beaten track. They help you off your own beaten track, because even if you're not following a convention, you begin to build up your own convention, if you like.
Yeah.
Oh, I do it this way because that's the way I've done it. So if you fall into a hole or you trip over, or something goes really weird, that that precipitates a new action.
Yeah. Well, I kind of I wonder if that, you know, sort of part of this thing where you know, kind of mistakes have been almost sort of defined again, sort of as you mentioned, by convention over the years. And I do have this sort of feeling that sometimes the language and the definitions that we have now just don't work. They don't sort of work as well. So, like, who's to say that that's a mistake? You know, it's almost like sort of society has decided that that doesn't work like that. Well, I don't know. That if it works for you, then in fact, of course, there are mistakes, but you know, it doesn't necessarily mean that, you know, what one person sort of views as a mistake. Sometimes we get too worried about it, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, also the world has changed so much. I mean, my mum's not
Absolutely.
free, and the changes that have happened in her lifetime, just the way we look at things, you know, like
Yeah.
the old days when bank managers were respected. And now what do we think of bankers? Wow.
Captain Mannering.
And you know, that and doctors, and you know, I mean, there are a lot of, you know, I do have respect for doctors, but you know, they don't always get it right. And I think,
Yeah.
you know, we've learned that people are fallible, and ideas and conventions are fallible. You know, the way we've looked at gender and sexuality and all those things have shifted so much, certainly in certain parts of the world.
Yeah.
And so, you know, in a way, culturally we've had a lot of mistakes, but it's also part of growing and the scars of our past. You know,
Yeah.
British Empire and all that.
Oh, how do you feel about culture in general?
It's
The
so, isn't it?
the progress or the future of.
Oh, I really don't know. I mean, you know, the polarization that's happened, you know, with rich and poor, and with, you know, Trump and lies and truth, and technology kind of polarizing people even more. It feels like we're going to crack completely open.
Doesn't it?
Um,
Yeah.
you know, I depends which depends
Yeah.
what I look at that day. And but you know, sometimes I'm so shocked about how awful things are, and sometimes I'm in my beautiful rose petaled bubble. You know, I think in the 70s and late 70s there was this idea that change would come for the better. Change would always somehow make things better. You know, we common, and you know, feminism, and you know, uh, socialism, and you know, for me they felt like really good things. And now I feel you know, more like you know, my mum's was saying, what if we have Sharia law here, you know? It's like, and I'm like, you know, it could be that, you know, I'm not allowed to drive one day.
Yeah.
I mean, what's happening in Afghanistan is not going to happen here, but it's just so shocking. And you know,
It is, yeah.
in Iraq, what's happening? It's very disturbing, really.
It is, yeah.
I don't know what I think about anything in a way. I just have to put one foot in front of the other, have an idea, and make something. And you know, I think sometimes I think, oh, it'd be nice if this went into a museum. And I think museums won't exist shortly. The planet might not exist. You know, so I just have to live day by day, be creative as I can, and be as thoughtful as I can. You know,
Yeah.
try to bring, I mean, I was thinking the other day about artists who I like, conceptual artists, and I was thinking about Cornelia Parker, and I was thinking she makes me smile, because her work is often really warm and generous and funny and thought-provoking, and I think those qualities are things I would like to have too.
It's interesting you say about that, because I mean you wrote a piece for Turp's Banana about Judith Bernstein.
Oh yeah.
And about the power of humor.
Yes.
As a kind of means of I guess a sort of means of protest, or a sort of way of getting the message across, which I think is great. You're absolutely right. That it should play a big role.
Yes. No, that was one thing that happened in my family. My dad was a humorist, I suppose. He was also a bit of a performer. So he would tell stories all the time, mostly from his childhood, and we would hear them, the same ones, again and again. And he didn't very often ask us what we think. My brother said once that his father-in-law asked him something that my dad never asked him, which was, "What do you think, Nick?" And I think, it was only when, by the time I started in the Raincoats, anybody ever asked me what I thought, what's your favourite colour? What do you like to eat? Well, I was like, oh, no one's ever asked me that, what I thought about anything. And suddenly you're a spokesperson for all sorts of things. So humour played a big part in my childhood, and teasing. When my children, I thought that's what you did to children. You told them funny stories and then you laughed when they believed them. I had to really learn that teasing wasn't such a great thing, It was pretty terrifying, really.
Yeah.
But humor is good, and if it can be, I mean, a lot of humor is quite cruel, I think, but we're trying to be less cruel. Who's a good non-cruel humorist?
Well, it certainly isn't Lee Hurst on both counts.
Yeah, but I mean, I suppose humor is often quite critical of, and if it's critical of things that you believe deserve criticism.
Yeah.
That's good. But I mean, I suppose in the past people felt mother-in-laws did deserve to be criticized.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been done in a sort of I keep coming back to this sort of empathy, but in a kind of non-empathetic way. And I don't know if humor can be done in a kind of empathetic way. I guess it can, but it's not. It's over the years, it's not been done like that, because it kind of prods and it pokes, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, there's a kind of surrealist humor. Paul Merton likes a bit of.
Yes, there's the surrealism.
Yeah.
Anyway. Brilliant. So thanks very much, Gina. That's been wonderful. Thanks so much for your time. I really appreciate it. It's been fascinating.
We went somewhere.
Absolutely. We went here, there, all those sort of squiggly lines. That was perfect.
Okay, well, thank you.
Brilliant.
Fun to do.
Thanks for listening to the show, and I really hope that you enjoyed it and that you'll tune in for the next episode. In the meantime, it would be really awesome if you could rate and review the show, and also share it with any friends who you think might enjoy it.